Let's make a dewdrop shawl on an S-loom. We'll cast on, do all the main stitches, and you can bind off in fringe. So you'll bind directly off with the fringe ending. It's super easy and a super easy bind off. Welcome back to Good Knit Kisses. I'm your host Kristen, and today we are working on the Dew Drop Shawl, but today we are working on it on the big Afghan loom. This is a big S loom. This particular loom is from Knitting Board. I'm going to show you how to set up. You're going to cast on, we're going to work the main stitch. I'll show you how to bind off in a super easy way, putting the fringe directly on there, and then show you what it looks like in the end. Let's get started. Okay, so today you're going to need your S-loom. You're going to need a lightweight yarn, really any yarn you want to use, but this particular one is more of a fingering weight. It's got some lovely sparkle in it, and it's a smooth yarn. Smooth yarn is best for the dewdrop. You will need a small crochet hook. This is a US size E, and the loom hook tool, whichever one is your preference, and then of course your scissors. And then you're also going to want to get just a standard 8.5 by 11 book. I'm using it to measure around and make my fringe, so I've got that off to the side. Of course, this is the Good Knit Kisses book. If you don't know it, this is the Loom Knitting Guide and Patterns book. And you can also find the pattern to the dewdrop in here, as well as some other patterns and goodies and charts. You will need a some kind of permanent marker or way to mark up your loom. If you notice, I have little black marks on here. I came up with this several years ago, right after when I was doing the review and figured out what I could do double knitting wise, and so that's what the black marks are. But this blue one is marks for the dewdrop, and so what I've got here is this is the starting peg. It's noted with a triangle here. That's the normal start, but I'm going one peg over to the right, and I put a D. It might look like an O to you, but I wrote a D from the other direction. So so this is going to be my starting peg here, and this little dot, dot, dot. So there's 3 dots after this dewdrop. That's my first section of the dewdrop column, and then I'm going to go back to these 2 dots here, and then an S is written for skip, and then I do 2 dots next to it. Now you don't have to do dots everywhere else, but this 2 S's and the 2 dots are pretty important here. So 2 dots and an S. So what you're doing is this particular one, you could write an S here, 1, 2, 3. So 3 on this side of the D for drop, because we're going to skip these 3 pegs. I'm sorry, I keep saying 3 pegs. There's 2 pegs. So we're going to skip. Let me just do that here. Skip and skip. Okay? So this is the starting peg with a D. I know, it sounds funny. We're going to make a slip knot, wrap it around, pull the back over the front, back over the front again. That's how I make it. You don't have to make yours that way. Put that on there, tighten it up, and let that fall through. And we're going to do a double E-wrap cast on. You can also call it yarn over cast on. Double E-wrap is if I wrap the this slip knot first and then knit over. And the yarn over cast on is if I don't wrap that again. So I'm going to wrap each peg twice and knit over and tighten it up. 1, 2, and then 1, 2. Okay, so now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pegs. I'm going to go to the back here, and I'm going to skip this one and skip this one and go around that first one that I had a dot, and I'm also going to go around the second one that I had the dot and come to the front again. And now I'm going to work the pegs here. So all pegs on this front side we're going to work. So I'm going to double E-wrap cast on this one. 1, 2. Okay, I'm going to do it again. 1, 2. Okay, and then 3. So a sequence of 3. The first 4 and the last 4, which will be over here, are the only ones that get a set of 4 together. So these are 3. So now I'm going to go back, and this is the only time I skip one in the back. This peg right here is going to get skipped, so I have an S on the peg. Okay, so we're going to go around 1, 2. These are our holding pegs, and this is what creates this nice long drop stitch. I'm going to wrap around twice and knit over and do that 3 pegs in a row. Oops. Okay, and then now I'm going to go back, and now I'm not skipping anything. See how I've got these 2 here and these 2 were here, and then we're going to go to the front again and knit over, and I'm making sure that I'm pulling all that extra slack. Now I'm trying not to make it too tight, but this first set might be a little tight just because I'm trying to get that double E wrap on there nice and snug. So make sure your first row is worked well, where you've got your pattern set, because once you set this pattern, it will make it much easier as you go along. So this would be a really great gift. It's actually a very easy pattern. You could make up several of these for gifts, but they're definitely going to be fragile. As far as I wouldn't recommend someone just hang it up on like some kind of rack or something, or I mean, you could fold it and put it in a drawer, but quite honestly, the best way to store it is going to be put in, fold it up and put it in a nice large plastic storage bag, like a 32 gallon, not a 32 gallon, a 1 gallon, or maybe one of those larger bags, Ziploc, I don't know what other brands, maybe Glad or something, it doesn't matter, but just some kind of bag that prevents anything from snagging, because this is like a lace work. Okay, just continue around and I'll meet you back when you've got about 18 sets of these done. Okay, so I'm down at the end and counting my first set of 4 and then starting with the next set, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way around. When I talk about sets, I'm talking about sets of 3, and then there's the part that goes in the back. So the 3 sets are 1 set. So when I get to here, this is 18, and when I get to the 19th one, that's the one that's going to have 4. So the beginning has 4 and the end has 4, and there's 19 sets. Or if you're counting how many drops you have, there's like 18 of them. So you're going to mark your loom. What I did is in the back here, I put a dot next to the last 4 just so I remembered, because this is where I left off when I did my first test. And then I've got a D. It looks like it may look like a circle to you, but this is a D for dewdrops whenever I work with this. So the ending is down here, it's a D, and then I've got 1, 2, 3 dots, so I remember these are the 4 that go together. So now that I've got my last holding pegs here, I'm going to go around, double E-wrap. Okay, just as before. And if you notice how I did that, I wrapped the bottom one and I sort of put my my tool on there to kind of grab it, and then it's already ready to loop over there. So that's kind of my quick way to do it. There is no purling on this project, and I love it. It's super easy. All right, so this is worked in a slip panel. So the slip stitch is the first stitch, that meaning you skip that first peg, and that's why we have 4, because every other time when it comes back through, it's actually going to look like that column is 4 stitches. If I only did 3, it would look like the ends were only 2 stitches long in the column of knits. So now we're just going to follow the patterning that we've already got set on here. So we're going to go around 1, 2, 3, go around this holding peg, 1, 2, 3, and then go around the next holding peg, 1, 2, 3, around the peg, and you get the idea. So we're just going in the sets of 3, and make sure that you don't cross your holding pegs in the back. Make sure that the previous knit one is at the top. The previous worked row, your current worked row is on top of the previous row, because once you've got a bunch of these on here, I'll show you how you need to move them, because you can't get all the rows on that you're going to want to make a shawl. Now for a scarf, you may be able to use the holding area to hold all the rows you want if your yarn is lightweight enough, but for the shawl that I'm doing here, it is not. Okay, so continue going around in the same pattern and meet me back at the end of the row. I'll come to the end here and I'll go all the way to the end on this one. Okay, so yes, this is going to have 4 on it, and that is correct. So we're going to knit that over and then just work all your stitches. So the loom got woven around the way that we did. It's not real weaving, but it's just you're wrapping it around. All right. And then because the S loom can be kind of finicky and some people feel like it just takes forever, one of the things you can do is I will knit over in segments. And so say I'll show you how to do my segment. So I go around till I get about either halfway, like to this little quarter area, a quarter of the loom. Halfway for this project that I'm working on, but if I was using the entire loom, halfway would be to the middle of this big circle over here. So I've gotten about half of my project for this thing done. So now I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping the next row, even though I'm not done with this first row. So I just push everything down and go ahead and slip this first part here. Okay, just so slipping the panel is just skipping that first piece here, and we're gonna go around and E-wrap. Or remember, after you do the 3 here, you got to follow this holding peg back here, wrap around, and go all the way around. Now you can also knit over as you go. So if you want to go ahead and just follow it all the way around, you could have, like, say, hey, I'm gonna wrap this one. So this is a little shortcut for you. So I've never shown anyone doing this way. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has figured out. But if you wrap your panel in such a way, sorry, I just totally dropped that stitch. You can kind of follow along and almost feel like you're getting 2 rows done at the same time. See this? So I'm on the second row here. Or, yeah. But you got to make sure and follow all that as you go. Don't miss it. So here we go. I'm going to go all the way around. You'll get the idea when I get all the way over there. You'll understand what I mean. So just keep going. And I wouldn't worry about counting your rows just yet. You know, don't worry about counting like how many rows you need for the shawl yet. But I will say that you will be doing 100 rows for the shawl, which really isn't that much. It really isn't when you're considering, like, if you were doing a blanket or something like that. This is only using half of the loom. And make sure and don't connect these here. If you see, I started to go over here to connect it, but you got to make sure and leave this a blank space here. So this is the way I'm doing this here. This is to get around having to move this turning back and forth, rotating this big loom back and forth. It can be very awkward on this larger loom, especially when you're working this Dew Drop Shawl, because after you get several rows done, you're gonna not wanna wear a ring or any rings or jewelry that it can get caught up on. Make sure that whatever chair you're in or something is not gonna get caught. If you have any animals or something, you might wanna attach like a bag underneath or something to kind of catch your knitting, because it is delicate. Okay, those long drops can pull, and I'm just warning you. It is very pretty, but I'm just giving you a heads up. Okay, so I'm where I've got 2 loops on my peg that I had wrapped previously going this direction, and so now my working strand has caught up. So what I can do is go ahead and stop working on the working yarn here and go along and knit over this other row that I had before, because remember I had only worked part of the loom. Okay, and push that down. And now go back to where my working strand is. The working strand is this yarn that's coming and it's attached to your ball, your skein, your hank, whatever. And if I say the name of a yarn term and you're new and you're not sure what I'm talking about, I actually have a video called Yarn Class 101. I think that's my name of it. Anyway, it teaches you the different ways that balls of yarn come and how you can take a hank and wind it into a cake or a ball of yarn. This particular yarn came in a hank. It's from a show, a fiber arts show that's local. And I got it, it normally comes from what's called a local yarn shop. It's a high-end yarn shop. And so it comes in a form that is a massive giant circle. And so I put it on a yarn swift that looks sort of like an umbrella. And then I wind it with a ball winder. And then I'm able to get it into a nice, what's called a cake. And it's like having your own skein of yarn. And then whenever I do stuff like that, it's in a really delicate yarn. Sometimes I'll go ahead and put it in like a sandwich bag or something like that, or some kind of bag to protect it, and so that it doesn't unwind itself. Okay, so I had wrapped to a certain point. Now I'm gonna have to go through and knit over this one that was from that first row. So you'll have your cast on row, and you'll know the very first row doesn't count. So the way you know you can count your rows is this is stitch 1, and this is a cast on 1 row, and then this is actually row 1. So you can count how many rows you have just by counting how many drops are. And if you forget, I mean, this is fine. In the 100 rows, it's not going to mean anything. So you're going to continue along until you get 100 of these. But before we go on, I want to show you how to work these extra rows that are the holding pegs. I'm going to move these stitches over and go ahead and get these last ones on the loom and show you how to get the holding pegs out correctly so that you don't actually cause a problem with your drop stitches. If you take these off the back here too soon, they will actually have a problem with the length of them, and they won't be consistent throughout the project. So there is a trick to it. So don't jump ahead of me. Please wait for this tip. Okay, what you're going to do is work back and forth until you have about 5 or 6 of these on your holding pegs back here. And then you'll take the top 2 off, okay, and you'll hold them with one hand, and so you'll have the top 2, and then you'll drop any of the extra drops you have here. It doesn't matter how many you have on here, just fill this thing up as much as you can stand it before they start popping off. and then remove the top two, keeping that tension on there by holding it, and remove any of the extra ones, just let them drop down. And then just put these back on and then work your way down the loom. So I would pick these up here, take this one off, and then put these back on. So the part where I said when things are hanging down, that's these drop stitches here. These are gonna start hanging down. You're gonna have a lot of this coming out, and you don't want it to get caught on rings and things like this. So if I was knitting this up, I would not wear my ring because it would get caught. So it will meet me back up in a moment, and you will see all the 100 rows done, and we will be back at the beginning side and do the bind off with the fringe. Okay, so I've come to the end of my knitting. I have knit 100 rows of the dewdrop stitch, and of course you can go longer if you like. I'm back on my beginning peg here, and it's of course one over from where this little caret is, the starting peg, so it's over here. Again, I've got marked with a little D or a circle or something. And we're going to begin this bind off, but the way they're going to do it is we're not actually going to touch this anymore. I'm going to just cut a length that's about the width of a book, and you'll see my pre-wrapped stuff. I'm going to show you that in a second. I'm just going to cut a length that's about the length of the fringe I want, which is the short distance of my book. And that's it for that. And then I have wrapped around my my extra yarn here around this book, well, specifically 57 times, and what I'm doing is that's because that's how many stitches I have, but really what I'm doing is I'm going to do groupings of 3 around my whole loom here, and for each set that I have these big ribs for these columns of stitches, and so I'm going to have clusters of 3 fringe. So I've got it around here really about 60 times, but I'll just grab 3 strands each. So now that I've got that, I've wrapped it around my book, and this is going to get me my length of my fringe. I'm going to go ahead and use this as a guide and get my scissors out and just cut along the edge here. And I'm just using the side of the spine as a guide. I'm not trying to like necessarily go up the center here because that would be really hard. Okay, so we've got our fringe right here. I'm going to grab a couple of these. Okay, oops. And I'm a nice hairy mess over there. So you may want to get something to set it aside and maybe not do this in your lap on the go. That would be a mess. Okay, so I've got 3 of them, and I'm going to make them sort of equal here. Make a little loop. And then I'm going to pick up with my tool here. I'm going to pick all 3 of these strands up. 1, 2, 3, and 4 includes that original strand, that original loop, because on the beginning and the ending pegs we have 4. So I'm going to take my crochet hook, which is approximately the size that will fit the yarn. Okay, I'm going to go ahead on this last one here because I have this yarn that's coming through. I'm going to pull this on through, but I'm going to leave it open and go back through those loops. So I'm just trying to get that, that yarn in there good. Now I've got my 3 strands here for my fringe, and I'm going to go right in the middle of this loop here, and I'm going to pull it all the way through, okay? And keeping this loop on here, I'm going to wrap around. So all these here, so it'll be like 6 on the end here, and I'm going to pull it all the way through. So now I can tighten that up and have those all together as the fringe together on that one. So now I'm done on that, and I can kind of push it to the back here, and I'm going to pick up my next ones and get 3 more of these strands here. So 3 more fringe. Okay, pick up 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna put my hook in, grab my fringe in the middle of this loop and pull it through. Okay, and then wrap around and then pull that on through. Make sure that's nice and tight. And that's it. So let me get closer in and you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so I've moved my camera a little closer so you can see it. We're gonna pick up these 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. This is right before this big dewdrop here, okay? So these are the holding pegs in the back, and it makes that really wide drop stitch, okay? Oh, I'm showing you off camera. It's this really wide drop stitch back here. So now that I've got those, I'm gonna hold it, keep those loops open, grab my crochet hook, insert it through those loops, because they're nice and big, and when I use a nice small hook like this one, I can get it easily through. And so I've looped over the 3 strands here for my fringe, and I'm grabbing them and pulling them tight and then pulling through these 3 strands. Leave that loop out there, wrap it with the tails, there's 6 of them, pull that on through. Okay, again, there's 6 tails because I'm doing 3 strands of fringe and flipped over, it looks like 6. So look how pretty that fringe looks. Isn't that nice? So now we've got, see how the ends of these are all gonna have this nice long strand, and you're not having to do any kind of complicated and backward bind off. So this is just a bind off with the strands here on it. And then I will show you what it looks like when we're complete. So just keep going around, again, picking these up, grabbing your strands, making sure they're even. I'm kind of doing this off camera a little bit. Make sure you've got that crochet hook, because it's easier with the hook than your loom tool. You can try it, I'm not saying you can't, but I don't think it's as easy. And then I kind of pull back on it a little bit, go through, you want to tilt it so it goes to that little teardrop, wrap it again, pull it on through, make sure you've got all of them, and get it all the way through, and it's nice and snug, okay? And if you're not sure, I mean, you could still put a knot in it, but I don't think fringe looks very good with an extra little knot, so this looks just fine here. All right, keep going. I'm gonna keep going around, and I'll meet you back up when you get to the end. Okay, we're coming to the end. I have the last set of 3, and then I have one more set of 4 that I'm gonna do. So let's get these 3 on here. Pull that through, and then the last set with 4, and you can see my little D for dewdrop, and then I have little dots next to these. These are the end ones that we had. So 1, 2, 3, 4. They are all off. Oh my gosh, look, it's almost done. Get that last loop over here. Pull it on through. Ta-da! Okay, so I'm going to pull this off, and I'll show you in a moment what this looks like. And here is the final result here. Isn't this beautiful? So this is the Dew Drop Shawl. All wrapped up in its glory. Woohoo! Isn't that pretty? So I talk about it on my other video for the dewdrop, but how you do it is you carefully fold this up, and then you would put this in a nice little plastic bag and give it the care instructions on it. And let me pull this down so you can see what that looks like. See it falling? So the care instructions you could put on the plastic bag, and you could even write the date. This hangs more, I'm just kind of doing that so you can see it. But you could put the date that you made it, and kind of give them instructions about keeping it in the bag so that it doesn't pull out these drops. Isn't that beautiful? So the other thing that you can do is it can be gathered up and worn really short, like more like a scarf, like this, like that. Isn't that gorgeous? So that's another way to wear it. So I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial today, and your loved ones or whoever you make it for or sell it to will enjoy it as much as I think my mother is going to enjoy this. All right, well, thank you for joining me again at Good Knit Kisses. You have a great day and happy looming. Bye-bye.